Hello again, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 5th day of October 2019. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, there's a high wind warning out tonight. Let's see, for Skagway area, including that inlet there and the Klondike Highway, and that's for winds gusts of about 60 miles an hour, looking at southwest winds 25 to 40, sustained with gusts of 60 miles an hour in this area. And that time frame is from 1 a.m. Sunday morning to 1 p.m. Sunday afternoon. And those winds are probably on the low end threshold of possibly being damaging, 60 mile an hour wind gusts. So be careful of that. Might break a few tree limbs off, maybe even topple a few trees, but it's not the worst windstorm they could have there, but it is enough for a high wind warning. And moving on, this is a webcam shot of the Parks Highway, Nenana Hills, milepost 325 in the north view there, and you can see new snow falling this afternoon in that area. So if you're on the Parks Highway, especially get up toward Cantwell on up, you may want to watch for slick conditions. And from there we'll go to the hazardous weather graphic, and winter storm warning still in effect here, Koyukuk Valley and along the upper Yukon, northern part of the upper Yukon Valley and the southern slopes of the eastern Brooks Range to about Arctic Village. That's out until 6 p.m. this evening, maybe another 2 inches of snow or so on top of whatever you already had, and the amounts were quite varied and variable here across much of the interior as far as precipitation and snowfall goes, especially snowfall. And out here along the coast, that's a coastal flood advisory out for the northwest coast here and northern Seward Peninsula. That's out until noon tomorrow. It's through tonight into Sunday. Same thing for St. Lawrence Island. Now, no longer a warning, just a coastal flood advisory. So possible minor beach erosion with that. And the coastal flood warning is still in effect here for the south side of the Seward Peninsula, eastern Norton Sound, right on down the Yukon Delta coast. And that's out until tomorrow, so it's through tonight and into tomorrow. And that's continued possibilities, seas maybe 5 to 8 feet above, or tides 5 to 8 feet above normal. And again, beach erosion possible. From there, going into satellites, you see we've got low pressure up here over the northwest interior and keeping some precipitation up in that area. A little bit of a break here into the Yukon Delta, front pushing eastward, and actually a wave developing on it here, roughly somewhere Barren Islands up into maybe southern Cook Inlet, somewhere in this location, and the front extending back, coming southeastward across the Alaska Range there. That brought anywhere the upslope areas of the Aleutian Range, and Alaska Peninsula from about Port Hayden on up toward Yakutat and into the hills there. Had anywhere from quarter of an inch to as much as 2/3 of an inch of precipitation today with that front, mostly in the form of rain, and sun breaking out over areas of south central Alaska, especially where I am in Anchorage today, with some scattered showers and then rain here pushing in with some warm front action into the northern panhandle, especially along the coast. Yakutat, about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation today and about 1/4 inch there at Sitka. Elsewhere, amounts were lighter than that. There were two of the heavier amounts. See this batch of moisture pushing off into the Yukon, and colder air here coming in from the west behind the front. Again, dropped snowfall levels low enough so Fairbanks picking up some wet snow, as well as we saw Nenana on the Parks Highway there in the Nenana Hills. And a little bit of moisture on the central Arctic coast, but up there at Barrow, they only picked about 1/100 of an inch. Otherwise, the remainder of the area up there was dry. maybe some clearing, and then back into light precipitation here, Seward Peninsula. And the showers coming in off the bearing here, really not much of a precipitation producing type, just several hundredths of an inch at most in some areas here across the southwest interior. And rolling this again, this low center looks like it's trying to drop a little bit farther to the south, as here in the last couple of frames are off to the southeast there. And we'll see that's the position 3 p.m. this afternoon, 9 to 94 millibars. Areas of snow again in the warning area there along the Brooks Range, and of course having ended back here to the west. But the low pressure area here roughly along the Kenai Peninsula, southern Kenai Peninsula, and the area of precipitation just grazing the coastline there, some showers inland, and that warm front pushing moisture into the southeast coast. We'll see as we move on to tonight, that system deepens a little bit and moves up to the northeast there toward, well actually it deepens about almost 8 millibars or so, tracks up into the Burwash area, or Destruction Bay in that location. You can see a pretty tight gradient here, especially over the northern Panhandle, that high wind warning out there for the Klondike Highway up to Skagway for those 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and 25 to 40 sustained. And actually, there's a pretty tight gradient over this, down into the central southeast coast as well. So it'll be quite a windy, wet night here, especially this evening coming up there for the southeast coast. But the rain cuts off, and so Prince of Wales Island may escape any precipitation, at least through tonight, possibly. Definitely a lot lighter on the winds. Same goes for Annette, Ketchikan, and maybe even over toward Hyder. Back to the west, trough keeps it showery, rain or snow, probably rain and snow out along the coastline. Whatever falls will be in the form of snow here anywhere over the interior tonight, but not much in the way of amounts are expected. A little more widespread area of light snow up over the north slope in the Arctic coast. Well, should swing in there tonight, but amounts, again, won't be too heavy up there associated with this trough. And this low pressure area tracking southeastward. Otherwise, high pressure building in along the eastern Bering Sea, and the gradient today between the high and the lower pressure over the interior, bringing, or actually back up here to the northwest, bringing west wind gusts as high as 50 miles an hour at Gamble, or 40 to 50 miles an hour along the southwest coast. Tooksik Bay had gusts 46 miles an hour. Those will begin to diminish tonight as the gradient relaxes there, and this pulls a little farther to the east, but good high pressure, be light winds and maybe some clearing there for the Pribilof Islands, St. Paul, St. George. Should be dry over the eastern Aleutians, or continue dry like you saw today there for the Fox Islands, and Alaska Peninsula drying out, and definitely dries out with those northwest winds, west-northwesterlies coming into Kodiak, downsloping off the Aleutian Range, Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet. Maybe a few lingering snow showers possible, the Talkeetnas and the Chugach. Otherwise, that's about it as all the action pushes into the northern Panhandle. And then for tomorrow, that low center moves off into Canada, and the front dissipates into this trough in the afternoon. So I'll keep the eastern and now southern areas will get into the rain tomorrow, probably tomorrow morning there. And it'll be gradually becoming more showery through the day over the southeast coast, but not, I wouldn't look for any clearing. Otherwise, some maybe light snow on the upslope areas of the Alaska Range, but other than that, should be a generally dry day, south central Alaska, maybe a few rain or snow showers mainly over the mountainous terrain. Again, any elevation that'll be in the form of snow, and some light snow shower type precipitation up here with this weak trough. And then the stronger one, which isn't that strong, brings light snow to the eastern Arctic coast, north slope areas to about the Brooks Range, but south side should be maybe partly sunny. Breezy and dry with clear skies, Kodiak Island tomorrow, and that continued northwest flow. Could get pretty gusty on those winds. Might see winds gusting over 50 miles an hour in some of the channeled areas there. And then a big storm out west here, but the trailing front just drags into the western Aleutians and begins to weaken with the low hanging back to the northwest and most of the energy pushing up to the north on the west side of this ridge. Take a look at the first day of the work week, Monday. That whole system takes a pretty good jog here to the east, and it should bring some gale force winds and maybe moderate amounts of rain into the western interior here. Of course, south to north flow, that's going to warm the temperatures right up. And so whatever should happen to start out as snow will quickly change over to rain here, say from the Seward Peninsula back up to the northwest. High pressure builds into the central interior right over the western Alaska range, maybe the Sitna Valley. Pretty widespread though, so it should be a nice day here from actually the western Arctic coast into the central interior. Southern Alaska looking really nice. Kodiak, another clear day, sunshine. Kenai Peninsula, Copper River Basin. And definitely improving here across the panhandle. This action and system upper trough shifting off to the southeast. Still a lingering threat of shower, especially in the morning hours here over the southern southeast coast, but then drying out following that with northeast flow. Definitely drying it out, but the winds won't be too strong. And lows tonight for the southeast coast down there looking mid-40s, in the teens, Copper River Basin, 20s, Susitna Valley and northern Cook Inlet, lower 20s on the east side. Highs tomorrow, mid-30s, lower to mid-30s, or in the 30s here at the Copper River Basin all the way up to the Arctic coast. Upper 40s to lower 50s for the Panhandle out west, lower to mid-40s, maybe upper 40s for Bristol Bay, and in the lower to mid-30s on the Arctic coast. Lows the following morning, getting down in the lower teens here, areas of the Brooks Range, and in the teens again, Copper River Basin, central eastern interior in the 20s, and looks like 30s to near 40 out in the west here, with 30s and lower 40s over the Alaska Peninsula, and a little chillier here for the Panhandle. Lows maybe into the upper 20s north, now be followed by highs in the 40s to near 50, 30s over the eastern interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Sunday morning tomorrow. We've got IFR coming into the western Aleutians, southwest Bering Sea here, with marginal VFR streaming eastward across the Aleutians, narrowing out and running along and north of the Alaska Peninsula. Got northwest wind flow here, downsloping, creating VFR flying for the south side of the Alaska Peninsula up into Kodiak Island. Everything east and south of the Alaska Range will be VFR, Bristol Bay also, and IFR, Kuskokwim Valley into the central interior, and scattered areas of VFR, IFR, marginal VFR here over the east side, north slope. There's a patch of IFR from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and IFR here over the northern Panhandle, over to about Yakutat with marginal VFR, the remainder of the way down the coastline. And for the afternoon, conditions improve here over the northern Panhandle and stay IFR to marginal central and southern areas. Also possible marginal VFR here in the Coast Range and possibly the mountainous terrain of the Copper River Basin will be improving. Really, the lower conditions will be along and north of the Alaska Range into the mid to upper Tanana Valley, and more IFR there from the Brooks Range across eastern north slope to the eastern Arctic coast, and then kind of a mix back to the west there. Gradually improving and get down into the northwest interior here. Really under high pressure, looking pretty good for tomorrow afternoon for western Alaska, eastward into the upper Yukon Valley. And in lowering conditions, looks like some lower conditions moving into the Pribilofs late, and then the IFR with the main frontal boundary dragging slowly eastward there across the west central Aleutians, trying to get in toward Adak. And then for Monday afternoon, it moves through and actually looks more impressive now as it reaches the west coast. Should make landfall, the IFR should make landfall along the Yukon Delta coast, possibly late Sunday night. And then for the Kuskokwim Delta, say midday or Monday midday or Monday morning. Definitely IFR here for the Alaska Peninsula Eastern Aleutians, and then in better conditions behind the front here, Adak and Atka becoming VFR, and then back to marginal farther to the west. Mostly VFR here, eastern interior, still Kodiak Island, Gulf of Alaska. Marginal VFR hanging here through the through the northern valleys, Koyukuk, Kobuk especially, back out toward Kotzebue. Marginal VFR eastern north slope, otherwise VFR. Panhandle, Dixon Entrance, right up into the southeast interior. And for passes, both Anatufik and Adigan, marginal VFR. And Lake Clark and Merrill also look rather marginal tomorrow. Rainy though, starting out marginal, become VFR and windy. Marginal VFR, lowest conditions for windy on the northern entrance, better to the south. Isabel, marginal VFR, turning toward VFR throughout the day. and Mentasta will be marginal. Tanita, VFR, maybe marginal VFR. That's just a slight chance of that going marginal. Depends how much moisture slips on in. And for Portage, marginal VFR becomes VFR, and that marginal VFR will be early in the day, and Chilcoot and White, IFR, becoming marginal. Freezing levels 2,000 to 8,000 feet here across the southeast coast, and up to 12,000 feet central Aleutians, 2,000 feet south of the Kenai Peninsula. So definitely on the cold side of the jet now. And icing, chance of some light icing out here with this weakening trailing edge of that front. Out over the Aleutians, best chance will be pushing through the Panhandle. Could see moderate rime icing, considerable moderate rime, but about 7,000 feet. Jet stream, upper level low today over the north central interior, moves eastward to this position tomorrow, followed by cold northerly flow and 9,000 feet, 50 knot northwest winds as high as 50, maybe 55 knots blowing across northeast Bristol Bay, Kamishak Bay, maybe southern Cook Inlet, more likely the Barrens, Kodiak Island, and 25 to 35 to maybe 40 knots coming down across south central Alaska, diminishing over the northern Panhandle. And then southwest, 30 to 50 knots there over the western Aleutians, but lighter under this ridge axis. And same pattern at 3,000 feet. Look for westerlies 20 to 25 over the southeast coast, northwest 20 to 45, especially northeast Bristol Bay, Kamishak Bay, and Kodiak Island, followed by turbulence, pretty widespread here of considerable moderate turbulence below 5,000 feet, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, right on up to eastern Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, western Aleutians spreading east, and the Panhandle.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Cindy Preller. She is the Tsunami Program Manager for the National Weather Service in Alaska region. Thanks for joining us again, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
We're talking about tsunami awareness and safety here in Alaska especially, and one of the things that has been one of your main focuses is the Tsunami Ready program. What is that, and how do Alaskans find out more?
Awesome. Yeah, Tsunami Ready is a National Weather Service hosted program in partnership with Storm Ready.
Okay.
And it is a program that we conduct with our partners in the state, but it's mostly community driven. So if a community wants to become Tsunami Ready, well, the first thing they need to do is get a hold of me or their local WCM at a weather forecast office or their tsunami team at the state level.
So, and this is something that's a NOAA grant, so there's money available to help encourage the preparedness at the local level there in the city or the village. Yeah. What are some of the places that have done this already?
Oh, our oldest Tsunami Ready city is Seward, you know, but also Sitka, Homer, Valdez are the, you know, the main players, but we've got several Tsunami Ready communities that I'm very proud of. It takes several years to accomplish this. And so a few of the things that they do is the tsunami risk will be assessed by someone like me or another scientist will help find out, you know, really what their probability is. We'll create an inundation map, an evacuation map. They'll have a mitigation plan. We will set up some partnerships with the schools, make an evacuation shelter, and then they need to practice. But it is the city that owns the program, really. It's up to them. And many cities would like to have sirens, and so we help them get those. And, you know, and they practice. They have to practice.
Sure. So let's say I'm driving into a place like Seward that's tsunami ready. What are some of the things I should look for as maybe a visitor so I know maybe where I need to go or can be more aware of my tsunami risk?
Absolutely. The Tsunami Ready signage is really blatant. It's this, you know, blue and white curling wave sign, and there's different shapes of signs that'll show you if you are in the hazard zone or where the evacuation routes are and when you're out of shelter.
Okay. So this is a multi-step process that helps the residents be more aware of their own risk, but then also prepare for when that risk arrives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, many communities sound their sirens daily, some sound them weekly, you know, to make sure everybody knows what they mean. And there's often drills. We have an annual drill once a year. We have Tsunami Awareness Preparedness Week, and that's a good time for each community to do some exercising.
Okay. And is this a program that is unique to Alaska?
Absolutely not. It's national.
Okay.
And all over the country, you'll have the same signage, so it's consistent.
Good. So if I'm taking the kids to California, I should be able to see something familiar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And you know, some communities hesitate because they think it'll discourage tourism. And so I would like to tell those communities that what they're actually doing is they're encouraging responsibility.
Sure.
The tsunami's going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to hit every coastline. So, you know, it's not about when, it'll be any time. So the fact that they're showing tourists that they are making steps to be prepared for this, I think would encourage people to want to stay there.
Right, and that would be no different than, say, you or I visiting the Midwest, where we know there's going to be really bad thunderstorms and maybe there's a risk for tornadoes. We're aware of that risk when we go there.
Absolutely. If I see a sign for a tornado shelter, I'm going to remember that.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're just doing a better job of being more prepared with something that's bound to happen again.
I hope so.
Okay. Very good. Where can people go again to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program here in Alaska?
Well, one, there is a Tsunami Ready website. So, you know, just Tsunami Ready,
Google
and that'll
Tsunami
get you
Ready.
there.
Okay.
And then probably the best person for people to contact is their warning coordination meteorologist at their local weather forecast office, which is Anchorage or Juneau, most likely.
Okay. All right. So most of the folks along the Bering Sea coast, again, are not at a huge risk for tsunamis at this
No,
point.
they don't need to worry about it.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. But always learning to be prepared no matter where you are in Alaska, no matter what the risk, always a good step. And tsunami is a major player in that, as we well know from events like 1964.
Alaskans are resilient. I really believe in them.
Very good, very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us again, and please make an effort to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program in your village and town if you haven't already. We'll be back with Cindy again next time to talk more about the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. We actually have a group of geologists working for the National Weather Service, so scratch your head on that one and we'll join you next time. See you next time on Alaska Weather Packs.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Not a lot different from what we saw yesterday. Continuing to slowly grow and expand up here, but way too warm for anything to start forming along the Arctic coast. And going to the coastal water forecast for tomorrow. Lynn Canal, south 40 knots, seas 8 feet. Gale warnings also there for Stevens Passage. 35 knot winds from the south and 30 knot winds for Clarence Strait. Southwest 30 knots on the south coast, those seas 12 to 13 feet. Gales here on the north coast, southwest 35, 14-foot seas. Outlook for Monday, Clarence Strait down to northwest of 15 now, with developing the flow now becoming offshore, so north to northeast winds over the northern areas 20 to 30 knots, with 30 knot winds from the north in Lynn Canal. Northeast 30 knots here for the north coast and seas 11 feet. North 20 knots on the central coast, seas 11 feet also. And then 12-foot seas here on the south coast with north to northwest at 25. Prince William Sound and the eastern North Gulf Coast, northwest winds 25 knots. Northwest 20 knots with gale force gusts here for the western North Gulf Coast, and definitely high-end full gales here for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay area. West-northwest 45 knots, or west 45, Kamishak Bay turn northwest over the Barrens. West 30 knots, southern Cook Inlet, northwest 20, northern Cook Inlet. And then for Monday, swing the winds around to the east here for Cook Inlet, but only 10 knots, seas subsiding to 2 feet. Northwest 25, Kamishak Bay. 20 knot winds now from the northwest for the Barren Islands, the western North Gulf Coast, and Prince William Sound, otherwise eastern North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories due to northerlies at 25 knots. Kodiak Island, west 30 knots. Higher gusts here, definitely, especially early tomorrow on the east side. Sea 7 to 9 feet, and then Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest 15 to 20 knots. Bristol Bay, northwest 25, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, northwest winds 25 knots. Outlook for Monday, south winds 20 to 25 knots here for the Alaska Peninsula, seas 6 to 9 feet, south 15. Bristol Bay, and west winds from Castle Cape northeastward there up the east side of Kodiak, 20 knots or so, 5 to 7 foot seas, and light southwest winds for Shelikof Strait. Fox Islands, I'll call it northeast, 15 knots with 4 to 8 foot seas, and then south to southeast 20 to 25 knots here for Adak and Atka. Winds increase as you head west here toward that active front, which will bring 40 knot winds into the areas west of Kiska Island to Shimei and Attu tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon. And then for Monday, southwest 20 to 25 for Unalaska Island, southerly Zunmac Island 20 to 25, Adak and Atka west-southwest 20 to 25 knots, and strongest winds in all these areas on the Bering Sea side of the islands. And out west, 30-knot winds develop into westerly gales there west of Kiska Island. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, northwest 25 knots, southeast increasing to 40 knots for St. Matthew Island, otherwise a Pribilof south 15, northwest 20, St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound. And then for Monday, south 30 knots, coming up south in the afternoon, 30 knots for Norton Sound, gales from the southeast for St. Lawrence Island. And then southwest gales here over the northern Bering Sea drop back to about 30 knots here along the southwest coast. And in the case of the Yukon Delta coast from a southwest direction. And for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, 30 knots from the south as well as the Pribilofs. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast, kind of a change in direction here on the east side, going from north 20 to west 20. North 20 knots though from the central coast all the way down to Wales. Outlook for Monday, southeast 25 knots, Wales up to, Cape Beaufort, and that's where the small craft advisories will be. It'll be there, lighter winds on the west side, and then 20-knot northwest winds increase to 30 knots. That's the other place small craft advisories will be for the extreme eastern zone there toward demarcation point. And for tonight, got a system deepening, tracking northeast in toward Burwash Destruction Bay, north of the border here, and there's a high wind warning out for the Klondike Highway up to Skagway and that area in Lynn Canal. Winds 25 to 40, gusting to 60 miles an hour with rain and wind, but the rain lighter and the winds lighter as you head south. Otherwise, drying out here over southern Alaska. Still some scattered snow shower conditions here over the eastern interior. A little more widespread with this trough and an area of light snow up over the western North Slope and Arctic coast of the Brooks Range. Big storm out west pushes eastward, and by Monday we'll be making landfall on the west coast with wind and rain. Thank you for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.